Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming. Today, I want to share with you some reflection about prayer and praying. And of course, I'm open to all your contribution. Gyoetsu and I, Gyoetsu is my wife, we like to go to travel along the Buddhist countries. We like to see how people in Buddhist countries live their own faith and how Buddhism applies to their daily life. Sometimes we think we know what is Buddhism, but traveling along Buddhist countries, we can realize how many kind of different aspects it may have. So we travel, of course, to Japan, and then to China, and then we went to Cambodia, Burma, Thailand, and Sri Lanka. Once we were in Sri Lanka and we were visiting a very beautiful Buddhist site. There are some caves, and inside those caves there were some beautiful images, statues of Buddha, beautifully carved and colorful. Then after the visit we went out of the cave and we see aside a little temple. And it was a Hindu temple in which a Krishna statue was shrined. And so we asked to our guide why there is a Hindu temple in there. And the guide say, well, we have to pray. Buddha is dead. He cannot listen to our prayer. So we pray Krishna. That was a kind of surprise for me. On the other side, if you go to China, of course, for example, in Rome we have a very big Chinese community. And in Rome there are two temples of Chinese communities, two Buddhist temples. And when I go, I often go to visit these temples. And when I go, I can always see a lot of people holding a bunch of incenses, bowing to Buddha, praying for their shoe shop business can go good. Or you can see Chinese woman praying to Kuan Yin, the Avalokitesvara canon, to have a male son. So it's a kind of tricky. And sometimes I ask to myself, does prayer and praying exist in Buddhism? Of course, this kind of question is related to another bigger question. Is Buddhism a religion or not? Of course, I cannot give you an answer. Of course, I have my answer. Every one of you, I think that you have your own answer, or maybe no answer at all. Sometimes when I go to schools and talk about Buddhism to students, they often ask, so we read that Buddhism there is no God, and we heard, and sometimes this written on their text, that Buddhism is not a religion, it's a kind of philosophy, it's a kind of way of life, but it's not a religion. I often answer, well, in Buddhism we have ceremonies, we are praying. So for me, Buddhism is a religion. But sometimes people think that meditation, that of course is the main activity, the main practice of Buddhism, and prayers are kind of incompatible, conflicting each other. Maybe because we have in mind some kind of stereotypes about praying, about meditation. People often say that prayer it's a kind of it's a request to a god. It's a means to an end, has a purpose. Sometimes it's a kind of deal, a deal with God. Please God, make me have this kind. I promise you I will be good. And sometimes people think that meditation is something, how can we say, that has no goal, or that is self-referential, kind of egoistic activity. For example, the previous Pope, Ratzinger, before he was Pope, he wrote a very well-known articles in which he talked about spiritual Eastern religion. And he was warning, and he said that sometimes meditation can be some kind of spiritual autoeroticism. That was him. Okay, of course, a lot of Christians things like this. So, does praying exist in Buddhism? Of course, we have to consider the diversity of the different forms or different aspects of Buddhism and its kind of historical evolution. Of course, Buddhism in its origin was totally non-theistic. Actually, it was a kind of overthrowing of theism and of rituality that is linked to theism. In Hinduism, there was the Brahman, the priests that were the only ones who can relate with God. And Buddha overthrew it all. But with Mahayana Buddhism develops a kind of perfectly religious features. Buddha sometimes in Mahayana is set in a kind of cosmic landscape on a cosmic level. It turns to become a symbolic image of the absolute. And in Mahayana Buddhism, there is a more wide cosmology that includes myriads of Buddhas living in myriads of Buddha lands. And these Buddhas can be object of devotion, of course. And there are the Bodhisattva, the beings that are close to become Buddhas, that have gathered limitless merits. And this merit they can transfer to others by virtue of their Bodhisattva vow to save all beings. And then, of course, they become object of devotion and of prayers. When we, as Western people, approach Buddhism, as I was saying the last time in my speech, I don't know if we have to take it all, the package. Of course, if you ask me if I believe that there are some Buddhas living in some parallel universes, and if you ask me if there is a kind of Avalokitesvara living in Avalokitesvara heaven, I would say, well, I don't know. Generally, in we, Western Buddhism, we tend to put bodhisattvas on a kind of a metaphoric level, allegorical level, some kind of symbols of the enlightenment minds of Buddha. But does the Chinese man who worship Kuan Yin, Kanzeon, is not Buddhist? Am I, that I not even 30 years that I practice Buddhism, can go to this Chinese man and say, "Oh, you're not practicing Buddhism. This is not Buddhism you are doing." I don't think I have the right to do it. Sometimes prayers, it's a kind of universal language. Sometimes it's a language we have to learn to speak. Sometimes we are asked to pray. When I go, especially if we are priests, we can be asked to do some prayers. When I go to interreligious or interfaith meetings, sometimes they ask me, please share a prayer with us. And sometimes when I go to schools, the students at the end, oh, please, can you say a little prayer? Okay. And sometimes we can meet people in need that can ask for a prayer from us. Some kind of benediction. I remember with in Europe, we used to go to make a session, make a summer retreat in a Benedictine monastery. It is in Belgium. It is very well known Benedictine monastery. And sometimes we get off of the monastery to go for a walk. And we were dressed in Colombo. And once I met a family with a child who saw me and said, oh, please, Father, can you do a prayer for my son? I have to say, oh, sorry, I'm not that kind of priest. But maybe I was wrong. Maybe I should say something. And sometimes there are people who ask for prayers. For example, last fall, Reverend Togen Moss this is a representative of European Social Office, comes to Rome for a meeting, and we were invited to visit a house of a Christian community that hosts people in need. There are sick people that cannot afford their medical treatments. And there was a lady who has throat cancers. And everybody welcomed us. And at a certain time, those ladies say, please, can you say a prayer for me? And so we prayed. We chanted the 7 verses Canon Sutra. And sometimes we may feel the need to pray. Maybe when I'm in some kind of difficult situation. Maybe when we have to afford surgery. For example, I have a terrible fear of flight, to go on a plane, especially taking off and landing. They are more critical moments for me. And my life has turned to be that I have to take a lot of planes. I come here in Bloomington 2 or 3 times a year, and we have a group in Sicily that invites us twice, 3, 4 times, and we have to take planes. So I have to take a lot of planes, and still my fear doesn't disappear. So when I'm taking off time, I always pray. I chant the 7 verses Canon Sutra. But you know, Buddha Shakyamuni was very clear about this. In his very last teaching, he was saying the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, the last days of the Buddha, he said to Ananda, his disciple, therefore, Ananda, be island unto yourself, refuge unto yourselves, seeking no external refuge. With the Dharma as your island, the Dharma as your refuge, seeking no other refuge. Well, you know, sometimes when I have when I'm being in the plane and the plane is rolling, I cannot be island to myself. It's very difficult for me. I feel helpless. I feel powerless. So sometimes I chant the sutra. When I always think about prayers and praying, and I think that, for example, I can distinguish 3 or 4 kinds of prayers. That are present in Buddhism or in Christianity and other religious tradition. There is the prayer of a request, what I call the prayer of request and devotion. There is the prayer of support, for asking for giving support to ourselves and to others. Then there is the prayer of gratitude, and then there is what I call the absolute prayer. These four kinds of prayers mingle together. They can be present at the same time. This is a kind of a generalization I'm doing. The prayer or request is linked to devotion, to Buddha, cosmic Buddha, to the Bodhisattva. And it's based on the Bodhisattva vow that the Bodhisattva make. Bodhisattva make the vow to save all beings, so we can go to the Bodhisattva and say, okay, you made this vow, please help me. There is the prayer of gratitude through our Buddha Shakyamuni, our first master, our first teacher, and the lineage of ancestors. In Soto Zen temples, we recite the Goju Shikibutsu, that means the lineage of our Soto Zen tradition, from Shakyamuni to the last ancestor. And we do at our center once a week, because we think it's important to express our gratitude to our teachers, our ancestors. And then there is the prayer for support, the prayers we do to support ourselves and to support other peoples. It's a prayer we do every day when we do the morning service. After we do morning service, we chant the Duan, chant the dedication. And this kind of prayer of support is based on our Bodhisattva vow, our vow to save all beings. And so what we do, we base on the innate powers of the words of the sutra, of the dharani, of the mantras. And the sutra, the dharanis, are concentrate of phonic powers of word. They can create a very power energy. And then we channel this energy to help someone of ourselves. After the morning service, during the morning service, we recite the Anya Shingyo, and after the Doan chant, may the three treasures flourish in the ten direction, may nations dwell together in harmony, may peace and tranquility pervade the Sangha, and may all beings live together joyfully. Then we chant the Daihishin Dharani, that is the mantra of the great heart of Avalokitesvara. And the Doan after dedicates this sutra, this Dharani, to sick people and dead people. When we say, may peace and tranquility pervade the Sangha, may all beings living together joyfully, is not simple a wish. It's something that is empowered by the energy of our practice. It's someone that is empowered by the energy of our chanting, of the Dharani, of the Sutra. We use the power of these chantings. Some specific sutra and dharanis or mantra, they are intended to awaken or to summon some energies that we can tune with. For example, there are the mantra or the dharani of the canon of Avalokitesvara that can tune us with the compassion, on some other mantras for wisdom. When I am in the plane and the plane is rolling, and I recite the 7 verses Canon Sutra, is not because I believe that if I recite this sutra, Kano will come and with a gigantic hand will support my plane. I don't believe it. But I chant this sutra because I think if the plane will crash or will blast, I will prefer to die with the feeling, with the energy of compassion inside me, rather than fear or anger. Sometimes we need to summon this kind of energies, and that's why what this kind of prayers are made for. Sometimes we need to awake ourselves. Sometimes we need to do something. Sometimes we need to awaken some kind of qualities that sleep inside of ourselves. Sometimes we may need to awaken God. There is a famous episode of the Gospel that is present in most of the Gospel. That is when Jesus calms the storm. Jesus was with his disciple on the shore of a lake, and he was saying to this disciple, "Let's go over to the other side." And I'm reading from the Mark Gospel. Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat, so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. The thing that makes me think on this episode of the Gospel is not that much that Jesus calms the storm, it's that the disciples, they have to wake Jesus. Hey, Jesus, wake up, I'm in trouble. And sometimes we need to do this to ourselves. Oh, I'm in trouble, maybe I need some help. And there is a witness from Koshu Shirama Roshi that says something like this. It comes from the commentary of the Dogen's Bendoa in this book, The Wholehearted Way. I've been physically weak. I often had to spend time in bed. While I was sick, since I couldn't sit, I chanted Namo Kanzeon Bosatsu, that is the mantra of Kannon, as a practice. In the winter of 1945, I stayed in a mountain in Shimano Prefecture and worked producing charcoal. Even when it snowed heavily, I had to go to work in the steep mountains to cut trees and carry them down to the charcoal's burners lodge. I was exhausted for cold, poor nutrition, and hard work. One day, when I was in the toilet, I almost unconsciously chanted Namu Kanzeon Busatsu. That was the first time I chanted it. After that experience, I began to read the Kanzeon Sutra, the 25th chapter of the Lotus Sutra. Later, I wrote a book about this sutra. I would like to read this book. It has been translated into English?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay.
I started but not completed.
Oh, great, I'm so happy. And it goes on. The name of Bodhisattva Kanzeon, Avalokitesvara, is commonly interpreted as the one who sees, contemplates the sounds of the world. But I think it's more precise to read it as the sound that sees, contemplates the words.
I'm sorry, would you say those two sentences again?
The name of Bodhisattva Kanzeon, sorry, my English is so bad, is commonly interpreted as the one who sees or contemplates the sounds of the world. but I think it's more precise to read it as the sound that sees the world. The important word here is kan, to see, observe, or contemplate, which means to see things without taking any point of view. And then he goes on. The sound that sees the world is the sound of chanting Namo Kanzen Bosatsu with our mouth. This is what we practice in Zazen too. For instance, when I chant Namo Kanzen Bosatsu, I let go of thought. I relinquish my viewpoint. This is portable Zazen, because I can chant whenever and wherever, even when I have to lie down in bed, walk, or be in the toilet. And then he goes and says, when I visit people in bed due to illness, I give them a copy of the Sutra of Kanzen. In the Sutra, it is said that when we chant Namo Kanzen Bosatsu, we will be released from any kind of suffering. It is also said that if you want to have a good child, chant the name of the Bodhisattva, and a good baby will be born. Isn't this quite a self-seeking wish? As a whole, human beings are always self-centered. It is almost impossible to eliminate selfish desires. When we are driven to the last extremes, it is only natural to scream for help without thinking. It is absolutely all right to scream for help in such situation. And yet, in reality, in most cases, no one will come to help us. Then we may conclude that there is no Buddha or God. This conclusion is a mistake. In the reality of life, we scream, help me. Since this is the reality of life, we should be purely as we are. Just screaming is enough. When we suffer, when we have a hard time, or when we are in a desperate situation, we just chant Namo Kanzen Bosatsu in the same way. I love this passage. And this just screaming is enough. It's like to say to Jesus, Jesus, wake up. Yoshiyama also said in this book, I don't think that chanting and zazen belong to completely separate schools of Buddhism. You sometimes make kind of a comparison between chanting and zazen. And this brings us to the last kind of prayer, what I call absolute prayer. The prayer that born and express itself through silence, without any request, without any goal. This is the practice of awareness that brings ourselves to let go our little ego and give ourselves to some bigger something, to merge with some bigger something. This kind of prayer exists from centuries in Christianity, in Buddhism, and in other religious traditions. In Zen Buddhism, this kind of prayer is expressed and actualized with our daily practice of zazen, of sitting meditation. Zazen is the paradigm of our religious life. For me, zazen is religion in action, in practice. Zazen is religion in praxis. Praxis, it's a word that comes from the Greek that means action. That means the way to do practical activity as opposed to theoretical or speculative activity. That is why, for me, Buddhism is a religion. Because there is not only thinking, it is not only speculative as philosophy. It's action, it's praxis, it's something we do, it's something I do. And we call it Shikantaza, sitting with the entirely body and mind. There is no contemplation, there are no techniques. We let go our little self that constantly seeks to satisfy its needs. It's a practice of absolute gratuitousness. Do you have this word in English? Gratuitousness?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay. It's completely selfless. It's good for nothing. It's what Dogen Zenji calls Shinjin Datsuraku. Let go body and mind. It's what Dogen Zenji say to forget the self. And Ushiyama Kosho Roshi says the same things in Opening the Hands of Thought. He says, Zazen is to Buddhism what prayer is in the Judeo-Christian tradition. Just as prayer is a giving up of our small petty desire and asking that God's will be done, Zazen is also a giving up of our egoistical evaluation of ourselves, whether as superior or inferior, and entrusting our life to the power of Zazen, as embodied in the fourth seal, all things as are they are. To forget ourselves, to let go our ego. For me, it's to let go all the images we create about ourselves, all the masks, the roles, the structures. We are born naked, and we will die naked. But we wear masks that allow us to deal with the trouble of life. But sometimes these masks, eventually, they get to stick to our skin, that we are no more aware that it is not something that belongs to us. In Zazen, we try to let go of these roles, all these masks, and ourself becomes naked. It's what I call a kind of a spiritual nudity, a kind of a nakedness. It's the essence which is absence of the self. And when I think about this nakedness, I think that is something that also in Christianity is distinct. I read a quote, and I will read a quote for Michel Croix. Michel Croix is a French Catholic priest. It's a theologian, it's a writer, it's a contemporary. He died in 1997. And listen what he said about prayers. Prayer, and above all, contemplation, have something similar. Being able, essentially, to stop, even if for a few moments, stripped of everything that is artificial in us, clothes and disguise, and present ourselves before God, naked and motionless. To live bathed in the sunshine of His love. You have the same impression that nothing happens, that you lose your time, but you never lose time. He said, prayer is to present ourselves before God, naked and motionless. And for me, Zazen is to present myself before the absolute, before absolute reality, naked and motionless. This nakedness corresponds for me to our original face, to our original condition. And this kind of original condition is described in the Bible, in the Genesis. The condition of non-separation, the condition of non-duality. And in the Bible, in the Genesis, there is the episode of Adam and Eve. And if you remember, at the beginning it says, Adam and his wife were both naked, and they feel no shame. They felt no shame, sorry. But the devil came under the form of a snake and said to them, why don't you eat the fruit of that tree? And you will be like God, knowing good and evil. Distinguish between good and evil. Distinction. Last time when I talk about hells and demons, I said that the word devil, diavolo in Italian, comes from diaballo, Greek, that means separation. So from a certain point of view, in a Buddhist point of view, the devil is the separation, is the discrimination. And here the snake say, you eat the fruit, you will be able to distinguish good and evil. And so they did, all of them, and they realized that they were naked. They feel unsafe in their nakedness. They feel insecure. And so they sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves. Those fig leaves are the masks, the roles, the structures, is the ego. That's kind of my interpretation of the Bible. I hope there nobody can be I'm unrespectful. But I think that absolute prayer, zazen, is to let go the fig leaves and come back to be naked, come back to non-separation, to non-duality. And we have to trust this nakedness, this nudity. We have to trust, we have to have faith in this, our nudity, in our nakedness. In Christianity, having faith is essential for praying. Faith can heal sickness. Faith can do miracles. Of course, in the gospel there are a lot of kind of miracles Jesus made it. But all these miracles are linked to the faith that people had in him. For example, there is an episode I love in which Jesus is called because a man calls him because his daughter is dying. And so Jesus goes to his house, and a lot of people, let's go, Jesus is going to do another miracle, let's go and see. And there is a woman who was sick, who had kind of an allergy. She thought, if I only can be able to touch his robe, I will be healed. And so he did. He succeeded in going close to Jesus, he touched his robe, and he got healed. She got healed. And Jesus was aware of this, so said, who is touching me? And said, it was me. And Jesus said, your faith has healed you. It's not Jesus that healed the lady, it's her faith that healed. And to the man whose daughter is dying, and of course he rescued her. Jesus said, "Don't be afraid, just believe." The wonders of this episode is not the fact that Jesus can heal sickness, but the fact that he can awaken faith in everyone. And to awaken faith, the faith in the truth that abide inside of us. I think that is similar to just remaining is enough. As Yoshiyama says, we have to let ourselves be awakened from other people, from other things. As Dogen says in Genjo Koan, to study the Buddha way studies itself. It studies itself is to forget the self. To forget the self is being verified by all things. All things can verify us. Other things can awaken the faith of the truth inside of us. We can let ourselves be awakened, and we can awaken other people. This is for me the religious path. To be awakened and to awaken. To make our effort to awaken the faith in other people. I like to end with a poem from Koshu Shiamaroshi. When I have to struggle seeking after something, when I feel loneliness in helpless solitude, when I am in despair of myself, these are all thoughts of ourselves. Leave everything to Zazen, letting go of thought, or to single-minded chanting of the sound that sees the world. At this time, even though we don't know it, consciously, suddenly, whatever has happened, the living reality of the self, that is only the self, is there. Just as the big sky, it's always the big sky. And then he says, the big sky is always the big sky. Sometimes it is cloudy. Sometimes it rains or snow. But the big sky, it's always the big sky. Whatever happens, the sky is just the sky. This is true gratitude. So, let's practice Zazen with faith. But also with no faith, it's good to practice Zazen, I think. Let's pray. Let's chant the sutra with faith. And with no faith also is good. Let's send love with strong intention and energy, without being attached to the results, of course, but with faith. Thank you very much. Any comment or simple questions? Please.
Two questions. One is, the French priest, he wrote, before God we are naked and, you said?
Motionless. Motionless.
Motionless.
Yes. Yeah.
Ah,
Still, like it's a Zen.
yeah. Thank you. Then I was curious what you would do now if the woman with throat cancer asked you for a prayer, and if the person walking next to you outside of the Benedictine monastery asked you for a prayer.
I would say a prayer.
What type of prayer?
I would chant, for example, to the baby. Sometimes when I go to Buddhist meeting, they bring me, for example, in Rome, in Italy, there is the relic tour. You know, the so-called relics of Buddha. They are brought around all Italy, And people come because people love this kind of things, love so much. Oh, let's go to relics. And each kind of people. I am always surprised how many kind of peoples. And we are supposed, our priests, any kind of Buddhist priests, Tibetan Zen monks, and Theravadin, we are supposed to hold the little glass stupa with the relics and to give benediction to people. And you cannot imagine how many people, not Buddhists, of course, not even Buddhists, because people need this.
Yeah.
And so they come to me and they ask for benediction. They want me to benedict themselves or their sons or even their dogs.
Yeah.
And what I do is simply to chant the refuge, to take a refuge. Only one time, of course. In the Japanese version, Namokie Butsu, Namokie O, Namokie So, Namokie Butsu Mujo Son, Kie Origin Son, Kie So, Son, Kie Bukyo, Kie So, Kie So, Kie So, Kyo. And this is my kind of benediction of praying. But for example, for people, for the lady who had cancer, we chanted the Canon Sutra.
Mm-hmm.
Why not? We can try to awaken the energy of compassion. We don't know, but we can. We can have faith in this.
And so, what is a benediction?
Benediction is from Italian, say good things. Benedire.
Yeah.
Blessing, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
From my perspective, that is part of being able to convey the good.
Yeah.
So it doesn't remain just here.
Yeah, the same.
I have a comment.
Yeah,
It's
please.
a question. That it occurs to me as I listen to you talk that, I've always thought of prayer as being this thing that belongs to the church or to the synagogue. But it occurs to me that prayer could be also a way of surrendering.
Yeah, of course.
If you're praying, you
Yeah.
need help.
Yeah, that's what Kosho Shyama says.
Yeah.
To chant with a single mind is to surrender, to let go. Of course. That is the meaning.
So now to finish, instead of the form of the vow, we say in the name of the Father, the Son,
And Holy
And the Holy Ghost.
and Holy Ghost.
Oh, if you are Christian, you can say it, but I'm not Christian.
Yeah, but I'm not
A few years ago, I was learning to be a doan
Mm-hmm.
for the morning service. And Molly, Joke Molly, was teaching us,
Mhm.
me and a couple of other people. And we were very concerned to get it right, to do a good job. And she wanted us to do it right, of
Mhm.
course. But she also said that when you chant, you shouldn't, it's best if you don't think of your chanting as your personal voice.
Yeah.
Because your voice does not actually belong to you. People will not be evaluating you as though, oh, is he a good doan or not,
Yeah. Maybe
And of
not.
course
Maybe
we-
not here.
Well, we
Not
do-
in Zen monasteries.
Well, we do that sometimes.
Yeah.
But the important thing for me was that that's not the point
Yeah.
of it. And so that was very helpful, what she said. And I think it's in line with what it matches what you were saying
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
when you pray, you are surrendering, and what you said.
Yeah.
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 The self,
Yeah.
it's an effort the effort that you make is to surrender the self.
Yeah. Of course, that kind of practice that in traditional Zen monasteries is called the Ino practice, because it's the Ino who chanted the echo, the dedication. It's very, very important. It's the most difficult practice for training as a monk. Usually in important monasteries, not all the monks they chant the echo, only the very, very well trained monks. And usually they train at least 3 years of chanting before chanting the echo. That is because in our practice, Soto Zen practice, that practice is very important. It's the essence of the morning service. Is the strength of the morning service. And what they train me in Japan is not to be. It has to be strong and sweet at the same time. It must not be too strong, but it must not be too feeble. It must have the kind of balance of strength and delicacy. Yeah. But another things that they taught us when we were learning of the chanting and of the Doan's practice bells, Taiken Yokohama sensei, he always said, try not to be better than others. That was for me the most important teaching. Try not to be better than others. They said that when you hear someone chanting the echo, you should not be able to distinguish who is it. That's very difficult.
I do have a question though also, which is, and I can't remember exactly where it is in the morning service, but there's something about merit accruing.
Yes.
We receive merit.
Yeah.
And
we chanted the Mahanya Shemita Shinyo song, I don't remember the exact formula in English, and we dedicate the merits to.
Yeah. And that always bothered me, the idea that we receive merit because we perform the service.
Yeah.
So,
we receive the merit for performing the service, but we do not take any.
We don't keep it.
We don't keep any inches of it. We give it all to the universe. That's the important. We channel the merits. When we chant, we generate merit, but we channel it.
Well, why does merit come? Because
the sutra are the words of the Buddha, are the words of truth. Sutra is cool that becomes shaky, the emptiness that becomes full.
Okay, so sorry, I'm still having trouble. You spoke earlier about awakening and helping others to awake, and I could see that the service, the chanting could do that.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that's let's call it a good thing as opposed to a bad thing. Something that we should do. And yet I'm not quite sure that that's the same thing as merit. Merit sounds to me as if there's God up in heaven, sort of raining down.
No, in Buddhism, I think it's my understanding. In Buddhism, merit is kind of neutral things.
I'm sorry.
It's kind of neutral
Ah.
things. It's something you gain doing such and such things.
Okay.
If you, for example, in Buddhism, if you go turn around the stupa, you can gain some merits. If you give alms to, in the Theravadic tradition, if you give alms to a monk, you gain some merits. That's, for example, in the Theravadic tradition, lay people don't practice. Traditionally, they don't practice meditation.
Right.
What they can do is to gain merits. And so they perform a lot of such things. It's a kind of it's like a karma. Karma is neutral. It's not good or bad. It's something mechanical.
Mhm.
And so that is, I think, in traditional Buddhist merits is like this, kind of mechanical.
Okay.
If you chant something good, if you chant the truth, if you chant the Buddha word, are good merits.
Mhm.
If you chant a curse, that's not good merit.
Right. Maybe it's the word merit
Mhm.
that is bothering me.
May I add to that?
I'd like to say one more thing. I think of merit or merits, several merits, as building up, adding together. So if I have 10 merits,
Yeah.
then maybe I can get a prize,
Yeah.
a good thing.
Yeah.
Maybe I would get into heaven.
Yeah.
you know,
Or be
whatever.
reborn. In Buddhism, people
Yeah.
get on merits to have a good reborn.
And so I think my problem with this word merit
Mhm.
has to do with the idea that zazen is good for nothing.
Yeah.
For example.
Yeah.
So that we should not be trying to get something.
Yeah, but you don't have to worry because when we chant and we gain merits, we get rid of them
We get rid of it.
at
Okay.
all. At
So
all.
that's the
There is
important-
any kind of merit that remains for us. You can be.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm sorry to take so much time.
The way we're talking about merit and the way it shows up in my mind is like points.
Yeah.
I gain points.
Right.
And with those points, I can buy salvation or something or other.
Yes, that's right.
And
That's exactly
so one of the ways that concept is translated into English from the Theravadan tradition is to change the language and to call it spiritual momentum,
Mhm.
which to me has got a quality of flow, and even the sense that the more spiritual momentum one has, the less one is concerned about it.
Mhm.
So it's this delightful way of becoming inside out
Mhm.
as the merit accumulates and as it's given away.
Yeah.
Doryu-san.
Hi.
I think the English word merit is a problem.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The Japanese word is kudoku.
Kudoku.
Kudoku is the original word.
Mhm.
And kudoku can mean two things. One is merit, another is virtue.
Virtue.
Virtue means something goodness, something good. So through our practice, something good
Yeah.
is, what is the word? Caused,
Cultivated.
cultivated,
Developed.
and we share that goodness to all beings. That is the idea. So English word
Merit.
merit is not a good translation.
Mhm.